Okay, we are live. I am excited for this one. I don't know exactly how this conversation is going to go, and it's probably going to go a little differently than a lot of my previous guests. But I have with me Jared Welch, who's actually a family member of mine. He's a cousin of mine, runs a very successful law firm in Kansas City. He's also a judge at some capacity, or still sits on the bench. And here's what I'm excited about. I think, and hopefully we get out of this is. I think we all have a journey and we all have, roadblocks that we hit. But I've had a chance to follow Jared's journey and I can tell you nothing was handed to him. And he has ran a very successful life in all aspects. I know he's still grinding and trying to figure it out like we all are. But I'm really interested in digging into some of those things that allowed him to get through some of those and persevere through some of those challenges that he's faced in his 50 years of existence, and just kind of manage through that. Welcome to the Chad Carden Podcast, where people and culture make all the difference. Our guests are real leaders that are making real impact by creating even better cultures and even better results. We're going to talk about things that most people aren't talking about. We're going to talk about things that leaders are thinking but might be scared to say. We're going to get into issues that can give you practical and tactical ways to set you up for a higher probability of success. Let's get after it. So first of all, Jared, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Chad. Thanks for having me. I look forward to this conversation. Like you said, who knows where it's going to go here, but hopefully it'll be helpful to somebody and we can get a few nuggets out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's just start here, and we can just kind of let this unfold where it unfolds. But talk to us about, I know there's a lot of change going on in your life right now. You have a busy family life, you have a busy professional life. Talk to us kind of about what's going on right now, where you're at, where you sit, and what you're doing.
Yeah. So my wife PJ and I, we have 4 children, ranging in age from 18 down to 3. We're nothing if not Catholic, I guess. I got one in preschool, one that's headed off to K-State in the fall. And everything in between, all the activities that go with that, sports and school. And then also my wife PJ is a lawyer as well, and we practice together. And we went out on January 1st and started our own firm, Welch & Welch, here. Our headquarters are in Platte City, Missouri, with a satellite office up in my home county, Nottoway County, up in Maryville, Missouri. So we have 2 different offices we run. We do plaintiff's work, personal injury litigation, workers' compensation, and then I also do some criminal and traffic matters. And as you mentioned, I was previously a municipal court judge. I've handed that off to someone else to do because those are usually of an evening, those night courts in municipal court, and my schedule was such that I had to kind of give that up because of all my kids' activities. But yeah, so big stuff for us as far as starting a new firm when the calendar turned over for the new year. Moving from one location to another location here in Platte City, and then doing everything that goes along with that. Anybody that's ever just moved knows you have to change your address and phone number, all this different stuff that goes along with moving. So you physically move all your stuff, but you also have to let your clients know where you're headed, and all the opposing counsel and the Missouri Bar and all these different places. And then, you got to get your cable hooked up and your internet and all the stuff that comes with that. So it's been super, super busy for us, but Welch & Welch is up and rocking, and me and PJ are really looking forward. We've been working together as attorneys professionally for going on 7 years now. She previously did insurance defense litigation until I brought her over to wear a white hat and represent plaintiffs. But so we've been working together. So it's a partnership all the way around, at home, at work, in my personal and in my professional life. I'm also the least smartest attorney in my family, and now the least smartest attorney in my firm. So anyway, with that, we're very excited about it. It's going to be awesome. We look forward to kind of this new step in our professional life.
Yeah, and that's a whole dynamic within itself, right? Because there's no escape.
We could do a podcast just on working with your spouse, right?
And we definitely want to dig into that. But let me start at the beginning. Let me go back. You've been practicing law for 2.5 decades, if not more, right? I don't know exactly. We're close to that benchmark there. Did you know you wanted to get in law? Did you just kind of fall into it? Did you figure that out in college? When did that really kind of come clear for you?
I don't know exactly. I've been asked this question a lot, Chad, and I don't know exactly when. I think at a young age, I didn't know a lot of attorneys in the small town where I grew up, but the few attorneys that I did know, they were kind of jacks of all trades. My family attorney was also a state representative at one time, served on like a local school board, and he did everything from your traffic ticket to your will and everything in between. And he just, in my estimation, was very well respected in the community. Like I said, he worked at charitable organizations and also would serve on local boards. And I think I just like the idea of someone who kind of is well respected in his community and helped out in his community. And I guess the passion for law came later. I saw these types of people as being well respected and seemingly making a decent living, and that's why I kind of got the bug. And then maybe because of my personality, this is like kind of like fighting, I guess, if you will. But now my head doesn't hurt. I don't get in trouble for it. I get paid fairly handsomely for it. And I do that on behalf of other people in the courtroom. And that's kind of how I've made my living. And it's really a passion of mine to help other people. And by helping other people, making my community a better, safer place to live.
Yeah, I think, throughout your journey, you've obviously leaned on people and people have helped you, but you've also kind of chopped down your own trees at times. And, you have your own firm, you're very successful in your own firm, but that doesn't go without kind of the trials and tribulations of getting to where you are today. So talk to somebody maybe young in their career, and what were some of those things that you found were helpful for you that allowed you to get to where you're at today? Just kind of talk through some of those dynamics, because I know where you started. I think you knocked on an attorney's door and you waited by the doorstep to get an internship, or hell, to get to just become an attorney. So just kind of walk us through some of that.
Exactly. And nobody's anywhere without the help of other folks. And I appreciate you giving me some kudos about chopping my own tree. But, the bootstraps thing is in some ways a myth that those of us that have had some success enjoy, but none of us get here without teachers and friends' parents and whomever has kind of pushed you and prodded you and encouraged you along the way. As well as anybody, when I was a young man, I had so many different jobs. I mean, it's kind of a joke almost between us about all the different things that I did before I started my professional life, before I got out of law school, from working on a farm to aluminum foundry and loading boxes for FedEx and mowing grass for school districts. Just we could go on and on and on about all these jobs that have kind of helped shape and form me, and all the people that I got to meet throughout all those different various jobs. But no kidding, in my professional capacity, I've really only been at one firm. It's just an iteration of that firm, and that attorney that you talked about is my former law partner, who's now a Judge Quint Schaefer here in Platte County, Missouri. And he was introduced to me by an old military buddy of mine who grew up with him. And so I reached out to him, introduced myself. My military buddy said, hey, look, he needs some help. His dad, who was an attorney that he worked with, was just appointed to the bench back then by Governor Carnahan, and he needs help. I was in my maybe my second year of law school, and I was like, I'm not going to be much help, right? To him, if what he needs help with is, practicing law. But nonetheless, he introduced me, and like I said, kind of waited on his step, asked him for a job, and just took a job with him while I was still in law school as kind of a clerk, and then just hung around and worked my tail off. And then he gave me an opportunity to work for him as an associate attorney out of law school. And no kidding, that's for a guy that had 100 different jobs up to that point. I've only worked for that firm or myself since. Eventually I became a partner in his firm, and then he was appointed to the bench like his dad. He's a judge down here in Platte County. And then our associate attorney and I formed a firm after he left to go to the bench, and we were together for over a decade until my wife and I formed our new venture here, Welch and Welch. And so really, no kidding, I've been with the same firm, right, since I got out of law school and practicing in this area. I've expanded and added a satellite office in Maryville, but this is where I've been since I've been out of school, law school that is. And I've worked with an office manager, like my office mom at this point, for 23, 24 years. And it's been a small practice where we've had, a couple different associate attorneys and a couple different staff, and that's it. I've worked with those folks kind of like a family for now, like you mentioned, almost a quarter of a century. And it's been awesome. I wouldn't trade it for anything. I love coming to work every day. I love doing what I do and working with the people that I work with. And it's awesome because, all the people early in my life that helped push and prod me, these same people that I work with day to day do the exact same thing. And if we weren't doing that for each other, then we probably wouldn't work. We'd get bored with it or we'd move on. And people have moved on. We've had associate attorneys go on and hang their own shingle and go to work for themselves and been very successful. And we hope that's a good reflection on us.
Yeah. I know Quint very surface level. I've met him a few times. Obviously, I know him through you. What do you think he saw in you? He's a little bit of an interesting guy. You guys obviously have a very strong relationship, but what do you think he saw in you kind of gave you that shot from the beginning?
Probably, to be honest, he probably did need help. Like our mutual friend said, hey, he needs some help because his dad was called to the bench. He'd only practiced law for 5 years, and he had practiced with his father when his father was elevated to the bench. So he probably just needed help. A law student can't do a lot as far as practicing law, but there was stuff that I could do, is simple stuff like serving process, literally going and knocking on a door and serving paperwork on somebody, simple stuff like that, doing legal research, stuff like that. And I think once you get your foot in the door, I have talked about this before, that fake it till you make it. You fake it when you get to college, you've never been there, what do I do? You fake it to get into your fraternity, you fake it because you don't know. And then once you get there, then you got to kind of work and kind of prove yourself. And I like to think that I just worked my tail off, and he appreciated that, and that's why he kept me around. I mean, get there first and leave last was kind of my mantra, and something was passed down to me from my own family, and that's what I would do. And even though I was commuting back then from down on the plaza all the way out to Weston, I would try to get there first and leave last. Hell, even on snow day, I'd like to get there first and have the walk scooped before he got there. Just, if I wasn't bringing a lot to the table because I wasn't a licensed attorney yet, I had to do things like that. At least I felt, to kind of prove myself. And then after that, it takes care of itself. Hey, this kid wants to work and he's willing to learn, and he gave me a chance and kind of took me under his wing, and we've never looked back. It's been awesome.
Well, I think there's two attributes that you mentioned that I think have allowed you to excel in your career and continue to grow. That's work ethic. I've seen that from day one when when I asked to go home after a day in the fields with you baling hay, that work ethic but I also think your willingness to learn. I think that those, you're always growing. You're always to sometimes the detriment. You know what I mean? Because sometimes we are our biggest headwinds. Sometimes we are our biggest challenges. Our wounds are self-inflicted, and I think we're always looking for that advancement, or at least learning and evolving, and that's great. And I appreciate that we both have that characteristic. I also think sometimes it can create some anxiety. Like, okay, maybe we just need to be grateful for what we have, and be thankful, and just pause for a minute. But what were some of those other things that you believe in from your childhood and your family and the surroundings that you had up in Northwest Missouri that you think, are those kind of those concrete foundational things, that work ethic, that ability to learn? What were some of those other things that really were instilled in you that allow you to just stay passionate about what you do and allow you to continue to just manage life in general?
Yeah, I think work ethic is number one. You and I get that from our parents and grandparents, and they were great examples of that. And then, of course, we have a grandmother that was an educator, right? And just being curious. I think largely what I do, what you do, Chad, certainly, is because we have a deep curiosity about lots of things, right? That keeps us interested, but certainly a deep curiosity about people, where they come from, what makes them tick, what motivates them, and we're in the people business. We're all in the people business. I don't care what your job is. I mean, even being a parent, when you wake up and your feet hit the floor, you're in the people business. Whether that's motivating folks, interacting with folks, but having that deep curiosity. And I think we got that from our grandmother, just, reading and wanting to always, be a lifelong learner. And those things kind of work well for our careers, but they work well for any careers. Just having a curiosity about folks. I think that's how I've been able to hire and keep people working with me, is because I'm genuinely interested in them, where they come from, where they want to go, their journey, and then how that translates into helping me help other people. And it rubs off on folks, as you know. I mean, what I largely do as an attorney is help people. And you have to be genuinely interested in folks and concerned for them, to help them. And that rubs off. And when I look to hire people, it isn't necessarily what's their skill set, what can they do, what have they done. It's, do they have this curiosity to learn and curiosity about people, and that translates into helping folks. And it's that work ethic that we got from our folks and our grandparents, and then also that intellectual curiosity. And not intellectual might be a stretch for guys like me, but it has been a lifelong process of learning. Not that we were the best academics at times, but having a curiosity for folks and learning, that's what keeps us moving forward. If you are not constantly learning, then you're not growing, you're not going anywhere. And that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for folks that want to work with me because they're curious about other people and curious about what makes them tick, what they need, what they want. And that translates into good support staff for lawyers, because we want to help folks and help people.
Yeah. You said this a couple of times, and it comes through in just kind of the way that you're approaching this, is that there's still a passion and an excitement for what you do, right? And you really have found that in life. And this question is going to lead to another question, and I think I know the answer. It might be loaded, but if you don't have passion in something, and I'm talking about you specifically, if something that's kind of lost its passion, or you're just not excited to get up and do this anymore, would you change? Would you make a shift, or would you try to grind through because you got so much invested in it?
It's a little of both, right? I think, because what we want to do is, grinders and workers, is just get through it, work through it, like you mentioned. But it's keeping those folks around you that kind of iron sharpens iron, we say, but that keep you looking at things at different perspectives. If all you did was look at it at your perspective and beat your head against it to work through it, you may stumble, or it may just be such an impediment that doesn't work. But because those intellectual, curious folks around you don't always look at things the same way, that's helpful, because, Jared, you're looking at it this way, and you should look at it this way, or at least you should consider looking at it this way. And that's part of that lifelong learning process, is that, sometimes you can change your mind, right? Or say, my way isn't the best way. And that's why you surround yourself with those, super, intellectually curious folks that don't always see things the same way, and that helps you kind of get through and work through some of that stuff. That passion doesn't go away unless you just give up, or if it's something that you've evolved and just doesn't interest you, or not something that you need to do to build or expound upon your skill set. But it's those other folks that help you do that, frankly. Yeah. And I hope I do that for them too.
Right. Yeah. One of you and another guy in my network that I know, Josh Buffington, probably have the biggest network that in my circle. I mean, I don't think there's been a place where I've been with you on this earth that you haven't ran into somebody that kind of similar to Josh Buffington. We always run into somebody that which is just you. Whether you've done that intentionally or just organically, or just, you're really good at those connections and surrounding yourself with people. I don't know your entire network, but every time we talk, you surround yourself with people that, inside your profession and your law office, but also just in life in general, that challenge you and that are people that are passionate and they're going places. And I think that has to also add to, like you mentioned before, I mean, we all just don't get here on our own. I think that also has to add to your growth and development. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely, Chad. And I think part of that may be because of all those jobs I had, maybe in part, right? Because I can somewhat separate different circles of friends or acquaintances that I know from some of those past experiences. I hadn't mentioned this before, but I'm also in the Missouri Air National Guard, right? I've been in the United States Air Force, Missouri Air National Guard, kind of helped pay my way through school. I was a prior enlisted troop in the security forces, and then eventually got commissioned, and I'm a JAG officer, a Judge Advocate General, a military attorney. I still do that part-time to this day. I'm retirement eligible, but I'm still doing it. I still enjoy it. You know, it's those various experiences, whether it was friends I had as a kid through Boy Scouts or friends from early on in my military career when I was a baby airman, and then of course professionally too. But if you keep track of those folks and keep up with them, as guys like you and I like to do, if for another reason, because we're curious about folks, how are you doing? What are they up to? I wonder what that person's doing now. I haven't talked to them forever. So I'm just trying to do a good job of keeping track of those folks. But it is interesting because I start getting business from those different areas and facets of my life where maybe I haven't talked to those folks in a long time, but that's, I think, what's created that network. And that's just because I really do have a genuine interest in people, and whether that's the next person I'm going to meet this afternoon that I've never crossed paths with, or someone that I've known for 30 years. I just try to make that connection. And it's pretty cool, some of the people we've got to meet, right? I mean, we have tons of mutual friends, obviously, but we've also introduced each other to people. You've had another podcast guest, that somebody I grew up playing ball against up in Albany, Missouri, that now you've connected with here 40 years later in John Doolittle. Just things like that, where we just put things together. And one of my good friends, we're name dropping here now, I know it, but it's Dan Demery here locally in Platte City, who you played golf with growing up in Southwest Iowa, right? And he didn't know that you and I were related, didn't even know one another back then. So it's just stuff like that you and I get a kick out of, and it's been awesome because those are the type of folks that like a John Doolittle that I personally want to better myself and be around folks like John and Dan. And I hope they would say the same about me. Probably fewer people do, but that's what I've done along the way when forming, this Jared Welch or Josh Buffington network, is what folks do I want to be around? What folks do help me be a better person, whether father, better lawyer, better friend, son, whatever it is, and in this world, in this day and age of social media and staying connected, there is an art to staying really connected to folks.
Yeah. Well, you do it way better than I do. I mean, I've told people that I said, shit, my cousins told me people that I know. I didn't even know I know. You know him, Chad. You know him through this. I'm like, oh, okay, I must know him. So you've told me before too that when social media came on, that kind of took your luster away, because you always prided yourself on birthdays and reaching out to people and all that different type of stuff. And now it's kind of, they've taken that away from you.
Absolutely. I love it. Everybody loves to get a happy birthday or whatever. It's a lot easier these days, people have social media and it reminds them and tells them, and that's great. I love it. But yeah, I used to kind of try to memorize that stuff, and it was kind of a little shtick that I had to stay in touch with folks and say, hey, and I remembered your birthday. And it has lost its luster a little bit, but those, people that know me for a lot of years know that that's something that's kind of stuck with me, and I've remembered, and yeah, so.
That's awesome. Let me switch gears here a little bit. You're in the thick of it with, your PJ's your law partner. She's obviously your partner in life. You got 4 kids. You run a very successful law firm. What is it that, I always say you can't be at your best if you're not at your best, right? And sometimes, the tank runs empty or runs half full. What are some of those things that you do to recharge? What are some of those things that you do to make sure that you're showing up at your best and can continue to play at the level that you play at every single day?
Yeah, I mean, obviously stay grounded in my faith. That's a big one for me, and it's really easy for me because my wife does the same. PJ does the same. She's from a large Catholic family. I'm from a large Catholic family. We send our kids through Catholic schools, and we just stay grounded that way. Our grandparents and my paternal grandparents are always kind of my examples. Of just kind of simplifying your life and distilling it down to a few things. We get so caught up and so busy in the rat race, but really, if you think about our grandparents, they were faithful people first, dedicated to their families second, and then they were hard workers, right?
Yeah.
And gave back to their local communities. That's pretty simple. I mean, but I say this to my own brothers sometimes, my own cousins and other relatives. Think about your grandpa and grandma and our grandparents and what they thought were important, and you can usually rein yourself back in, because generally speaking, it's timeless stuff, right?
Yeah.
We get caught up in some of this other stuff, and it's just not as important as we think it is. Those things, your faith, your family, friends, your local community, those are timeless. And if you can kind of pull back a little bit and focus on those things, it's pretty easy. Really. I mean, we overcomplicate it, but if you can kind of stick to those things, that's what keeps me grounded whenever I'm taking on too much, whether I'm, maybe not at my best for my family or my clients for that matter. I have to just kind of remember those foundational things. And then I think it kind of makes it a little bit easier. I mean, that sounds oversimplified, and it is by design. They were simple people, right? Very self-sufficient and hard workers, but they would rely on each other and on their faith. And I think those two things kind of would keep them grounded, and that's what keeps me grounded. I think it's what keeps you grounded.
Yeah, I think those things. We can get caught up in the noise. There's a lot of noise, and we live very fast-paced lives. But you're right. There's those always kind of anchor points, or those go-tos that really help kind of subside the noise and realize what's important, and maybe prune some of the other things in life as we go. I know you also like to hunt a little bit. I know you also sometimes like to swing the golf club. Sometimes it's a humbling experience, but on both ends as we do that. And obviously Dan, who you mentioned earlier, I don't know if he ever has a bad day on the golf course, but which is frustrating at times when you play with him. But anyway, so let's switch again. We can take this a lot of different ways, but let me go back to your profession. So, and I've been educated over kind of the law profession through you, some of our other friends who we went to college with. We've got a wide network of attorneys. There's a lot of different practices in the space of law, right? And I until I was educated with, I thought lawyers did everything, but there's specialties, and some people do more than others. And have you fine-tuned your niche, or do you still, do you still kind of play in the sandbox that you played in when you started with Quint? What's that thing, and where do you spend your time? What do you find most passionate doing in the profession?
Yeah, I think I have fine-tuned my niche. And I mentioned those attorneys that I knew growing up in these small towns and these county seats where they were, no kidding, jack of all trades. Only because that's what I knew. I thought, that's what attorneys did. But those general practitioners, those solo and general practitioners, they're kind of dying breed. Most people specialize. I get it. And I have, to a certain extent, cut back some of the area of the law that I do, only so that I can kind of focus and be, kind of at my best in those just few areas, like plaintiff's work and personal injury, workers' compensation, and then some criminal, and that's largely so I can do litigation and be in the courtroom and use what I think are some of my better skill sets, some of which is that storytelling that you and I can sit here and do, back and forth all day. But it's that ability to kind of communicate effectively, sometimes through telling your client's story. So yeah, I have fine-tuned that a little bit and found that you do specialize. But I'm also in a small firm, right, where we do different things than someone might do that specializes in some contractual law that works in a big firm downtown Kansas City or St. Louis. But I have networks of people that do all those jobs. You mentioned some of our fraternity brothers, and it's funny, a lot of those guys were very competitive, very type A's, and we've all kind of landed generally in litigation, which is no surprise to anybody that knew all of us back then. And I lean on those guys. But also, other attorneys I've met, that do other things. You can find the expertise that your client may need, even if it's not you, right? I like saying to folks and referral sources, you send them, I'll sort them. I'll find a home for them where they need to go and take care of them. And I take pride in doing that because I have that big network. But yeah, it's been refined to kind of those areas, and that's really so that I can concentrate my efforts and my ongoing learning and study to those areas of the law, and partly because I found that's where my passion lied. Right, you kind of narrow that down as you get into it. I was more of a general practitioner probably when I first started. That's what Quint and his father Abe, that's what they did, and that's kind of what I did. But I've kind of narrowed it down as times went on, and that's just kind of partly too, when you're younger, you take all comers, right? You need to get paid, you need to pay the bills, and you kind of, your expertise is whatever comes through the door next. But I've kind of narrowed that down a little.
You've seen, again, 2.5 decades, maybe longer, somewhere in that. I mean, I think we're in that range. Has law changed? Is it changing? Is AI? Is there dynamics that you have to shift with, or has it stayed kind of steady throughout, your experience?
No, like a lot of areas, of our lives, it's changed. If technology, the stuff we're doing right now, I mean, we through COVID really kind of made this switch to appear in court, much like we are now on these platforms like WebEx, where, and that's changed the game too, right? I mean, having an office across the street from the courthouse was kind of a competitive advantage, where someone, down the city might call and say, Jared, take care of this, or can you help me out with this? Because you can just walk across the street. Now they can get on like this and maybe be in their pajamas from here down, and their shirt and tie from there up, and conduct business. And a lot of it's been awesome, right? It helps streamline things, uses technology, AI is coming, that's going to help use technology. As kind of an old school guy, I think there's still some things, AI can't get in the courtroom and get in front of juries, right, or make arguments to judges. You still have to have somebody that can effectively communicate and tell their clients stories, and that, I think that's where people like me can have a competitive advantage. But yes, it's changed, and it's changed fast. Even just email, cell phones, stuff like that. When I first started practicing law, you could maybe wait a day or two to respond to a fax. You might have gotten. And now people expect you to get back with them much quicker, and it's kind of like you're always on. And that's, some of those boundaries you have to set and things like that when you're dealing with your own families and trying to manage your time. And sometimes you can do that just with effective communication on the front end to say, hey, to your client, look, I get in this world that, cell phones and email, but, I have to set these boundaries so I can be at my best for everybody. And if you want me to be at my best for you, you have to recognize and respect some of those boundaries. But yeah, it's a game changer. People expect answers yesterday, right? And so you have to kind of keep up with that, and it's ever evolving and ever changing. And I often share here with a guy who's in his 70s, and he is awesome with technology, and he's a litigator, and he just knows you have to learn and keep rolling with it. He's been practicing way longer than I have. He's forgotten more about the law than I'll probably ever know, but it's those guys that are lifelong learners, and gals that are lifelong learners, that continue to be curious and learn, that are going to keep up with it. It's not going to bowl them over. They're not going to be scared by it. Oh, AI is going to take my job. No, you just learn, and you kind of go with it and roll with it. And that's what we're going to do. And that's what successful people are going to do anyway. But yeah, I've seen a lot of change, a ton, just in the nearly 25 years that I've been practicing, a lot of change in how we practice law. And this is part of it, this technology. Good, bad, or indifferent, it's here, so embrace it.
Yeah, but like I mean, yes, there's a lot of change, and like you said, the ability to adapt is the strongest asset that anybody can have, which obviously you do have that. But there's also an art to the litigation piece that is going to be hard to replace, right? The ability to connect, the ability to tell the story, the ability to create the scenarios, and the things that you do that give you that advantage over people that might not have that ability at the level that you have it. So
And thank
that's
goodness
still
for that.
constant.
And thank goodness for that, right? Because, where AI is going to be helpful in some of this contractual stuff and some of the transactional stuff, is awesome. And even for some of the stuff I do, we're starting to learn and use it, and it's awesome. But like I said, until they're putting, robots in the courtroom to connect with real people, there's got to be robots, attorneys and robot jurors, I guess, for it to work. But until that happens, it's still a human connection. It's still talking with folks, distilling information down for them, telling your client's story, and doing so in a way that's effective. That's not going to be replaced anytime soon. Hopefully not in my working lifetime, because that's the part that I enjoy, and that's that kind of just connection, human connection part that I.
You mentioned you've been in one firm with some iterations, and very successful, yet quaint. So, and we never really talked about this. Are there aspirations to grow it? Are you content with the size that you have and the caseload that you have? I mean, there's firms that are all different sizes. Did you ever dream about building a big firm? Was that never in the cards? Just not your, not your cup of tea? What was your mindset behind that?
Yeah, I mean, that's evolved too, right? Because while the more army ants you have, sometimes you can, grow your pyramid scheme, if you will,
Right.
which is, and that's not a negative, but that's kind of how larger law firms are, worker bees and that. But growth is a double-edged sword, as you know.
Absolutely.
And when you're kind of, sometimes at your best, as a lone wolf and working your thing, as a litigator, you're careful about who you bring into your circle and who you have representing you and helping you with that process. And so I have kind of dialed that aspiration back a little bit, where it's me and my wife, PJ, doing it for now. We do have one associate attorney that's working with us, who's great. And I have often talked with my folks, because you see a lot of generational lawyers. I've talked with my kids, and it's hilarious because they're like, "Oh no, we don't want to be attorneys, Dad. They work too much, right? They got two parents, both their parents are attorneys, and we, grind and work a lot." And they'll say, "Oh no, gosh, I'm not interested in the law," But I'm still holding that prospect open, potentially. Maybe I won't have to change the name again, right, or the logo perhaps, if I'm bringing in one of my kiddos. But they don't seem to have an interest in law right now. But I do have a nephew that's in law school right now over at KU. So he's a great kid, and he's worked for us part-time. So you never know. I mean, it has to be the right growth for us, especially when it's kind of a family-held deal. That was kind of our goal. That's why we got to where we got here now with our new firm, our new iteration. And so, it's our baby, it's our deal. All of our eggs are in this basket, right? Yeah. So nobody's gonna work it harder or be more attentive to this business than us, because it's our baby.
Yeah, that's it. That's selfish. Selfishly, I'm absorbing that as you go, because in my business over the past 2.5 decades, we've expanded and we've contracted, and and sometimes I think growth. It's easier just for me to do it myself. That's just kind of sometimes that's my own personality, and but again, when I grow people, it's not them. It literally is me. Like I am the biggest. My wounds are self-inflicted there, because I can't get out of my own way. But
collaboration though. Yeah, not to interrupt you, but collaboration is good too, right? And like for you, I have done some independent contracting, consulting with you, and really enjoyed it. By the way, it was almost like a jury selection in a way. Some of the stuff that we were doing, it's been years ago, but that collaboration, you do this, and I do this to a certain extent when I associate with other attorneys on cases and work with other attorneys on cases. I enjoy that. right? That's kind of having a bigger footprint without necessarily having a bigger firm or a bigger office. And so I enjoy collaborating with folks, and I'm going to continue to do that. I mean, I know you do that as well, where you might have someone on for this project, or you may go help someone for that project.
Right.
It's the same with attorneys. And I mean, I've done some of my best learning, as an attorney by associating with other more experienced attorneys on cases, and it's been awesome. And I'm going to continue to do that. I love doing that, actually. So, yeah, my office may not grow by 5 more attorneys, let's say, but it doesn't mean that I'm not going to expand my footprint or otherwise collaborate and work with other folks.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think the model on this end, sometimes, as you grow and the fixed cost and the overhead as it grows, that's not always the best. The variable costs work well for me because my projects come and go, as and what kind of clientele, what kind of portfolio we have at different times in the game.
That's not much different than an attorney, right?
Yeah. I think it's very similar models. There's some correlation there. Let me come down and again, you may not I always say it's hard to read the label when you're inside your own bottle. Like, you might not realize this, but there are so many nuggets, Jared, that you've said that I can take away, and hell, I've known you all my life. And so I really appreciate this conversation. But let me go one more topic here, because we really didn't touch on it. A little bit we did, but like I said, we could probably have our own podcast around it. You and PJ have been working together for 7 years. You're in it together, right? I don't think there's any turning back. I mean, you could always kind of separate professionally or separate personally, but that's always an option, I guess. But
well, I'm still thinking it till I make it with her, right? I mean,
but I'm curious, do you guys just organically or naturally figure it out as you go, or are you guys intentional and deliberate about having, I just call them rules of the game? Like, have you guys sat down and said, okay, let's put some parameters. Let's make sure we're living into expectations. Let's make sure that we're not getting out of bounds. Or is it just, no, there's really no playbook. We just have figured it out as the pages come. We put copy on it and we move to the next page. What is that dynamic with you and PJ when it comes to kind of life in general?
It is maybe sadly more of the latter, probably. I mean,
okay.
Obviously with just different personalities and skill sets, and PJ did litigation on the insurance defense side, so she brings a great wealth of knowledge from those experiences. But yeah, I mean, we kind of live in it, right? Like the law and just what we're doing is like kind of our life, even when we weren't working together. And maybe this is a question for our kids, because I mean, it's dinner table conversation sometimes.
Yeah.
Cases, what we're working on, the things that we feel strongly or passionate about. That's the stuff we're talking about. And that may be too, I guess, maybe a little bit, maybe why I have some kiddos that maybe think they don't want to be in the law. And I get that too. Maybe they're tired of hearing about it, because we probably should maybe shut it off sometimes when we don't. But no, I think we've just tried to use each other's strengths and weaknesses, just like we have within our own family dynamic. PJ is smarter, probably works harder, probably does a better job. I'm not sure what I bring to the table. Maybe just that large connection of folks, big network. But joking aside, we just play off each other's strengths and weaknesses. And she's strictly doing personal injury litigation. And I get to dabble in some other things and get out of the office a little bit more to feed that kind of social interaction part of me that I need. But yeah, we've kind of just figured that dynamic out as we go. Now that it's our own deal, perhaps some more barriers or some more rules of the game probably need to be met. But I think we have such a passion for it that we don't turn it off. It's kind of just what we live in, and day to day we talk about, and probably would bore some people to death, I'm sure, but we just get a kick out of it, and it's what feeds us and fuels us, and also kind of what keeps the roof over our head and feeds our kiddos. And so yeah, we're in the thick of it. Maybe at some point we'll have a little bit more walls. But I think we're so busy with everything we have between our office and our home life that, we just roll from one thing to the next and just do a good job of kind of just keeping covered down and making sure we're at our best for everybody, right? Our clients and our family.
Well, like you said earlier, people have law needs. They can start with you. And then, if it's not your expertise or something that you do, you have a large network of people that you can obviously connect them with as they, whatever that need might be. So if people do have law needs, where do they find you?
Man, we just moved over, so I'm going to give you a web address that's under construction, embarrassingly, but it's welch-law.com. That's going to be our new web address. You can still check out my old website, Welch and Webb, and it's up, and I'm pretty proud of it. It's pretty awesome. And Webb and I had a amicable split. We're still buddies. We were just talking earlier this morning on some cases where we're referring stuff back and forth. And still kind of sorting out, our phone number, address. Hey, did you get a call from so-and-so? I got a call for you. We're working through that. We're literally blocks away from one another, and we've kind of grown up together in the law. So we're still buddies and still tight. So you can check out my information there. Obviously, in this day and age, you can just Google Jared Welch or Pamela Welch. You're going to find information about us. We're in the same race where we're getting likes and reviews, just like everybody wants to. So we land on the page higher. So you can see some of those. You can see a couple of them cussing me too, I'm sure. But you can find all that information out there with a couple clicks of Google and looking around on a search engine. But yeah, I'm in Platte City, Missouri, and I'm in Maryville, Missouri, up there in my home county. I've got offices in both locations. I got a full-time admin up there in Maryville that works for me. I'm in and out of there 2, sometimes 3 times a week in Maryville, plus down here in Platte City. And then we work the metro Kansas City area, both sides of the state line. PJ's licensed in Kansas as well. She's a Kansas girl originally. And then we work all of northwest Missouri up there in the rural area. Chad, that's the area where you and I are from, kind of up there, southwest Iowa and northwest Missouri. A lot of those smaller towns, rural areas where I grew up, they don't have, doctors, lawyers, dentists. They don't have a glut of them in those areas. So we've kind of taken advantage of that because there's a vacuum. All those guys that I knew growing up that were attorneys, they've either retired or passed on. And we have tried to take advantage of that and say, hey, look, we are for Northwest Missouri. And I tell people I go, Kansas City on the south to the Iowa line on the north, and as far east as Chillicothe maybe, and everywhere in between. And we just really get in our vehicles and burn up the roads up through Northwest Missouri and take care of folks that may not have an attorney there on the square in their home county or hometown. And we've tried to kind of just fulfill that need. And I'm from that area, so I enjoy getting back there and seeing folks that I knew growing up and representing them, their families and friends. And so yeah, we're kind of located here in northwest Missouri and in northeast Kansas and in the metropolitan Kansas City area. But like I said, we got a big network. We've referred cases, in Florida, attorneys we know, in Texas, certainly we have attorney brothers and folks over in the St. Louis area that we work with, and it's just been awesome. So it's really a small world when you get down to it. But yeah, up here in northwest Missouri, we like to think that we're the preeminent lawyers up in this area, and just really get out there in the community and work with folks and help them out. And so if you have any needs up here in Kansas City, northwest Missouri,
That's awesome, man. It's an honor to have you as a guest. Obviously, I've known you my whole life, and I also know your hourly rate, so I appreciate you giving up an hour. You can send me a bill if you want. But I wish we could get into it more. Again, you gave it a kind of information, but I know your story, and I admire you both on the professional side, what you've done, on the personal side, what you've done. And JP, just keep making awesome shit happen, man. I appreciate it, and I'm happy to call you a cousin and a friend and everything in between. So enjoy the rest of your day. I really appreciate your time, and we'll see you on the other side.
Chad, thank you so much for asking me, man. It's been great. We can do this again sometime.
You bet. See you, bud. Bye.
Thanks.